Hello, fellow rebels and like-minded people out there. Today we're meeting again for our monthly Rebel Toolbox community event, and we have Marcel.
Oh, yeah.
And you have myself. My name is Daniela. Hello. And on this beautiful Northern Hemisphere summer's day, I will hand you over to Marcel to give you a brief introduction and overview over what happened since we spoke last time.
So there's been quite a bit of work going on for a change, which is nice. There's three things I wanted to highlight today. One of them is a bit negative and the other two are positive. So let's get the negative one out the way first. We've been looking at a memory leak, or at least a reported memory leak within the Rebel engine. And although we've identified a few memory leaks, there's one that remains that has been annoying me in the sense that I can't find out what's causing it, because every time I look at it, it definitely shouldn't be reported as a memory leak, but it is being reported as a memory leak. So we have automated build tests that detect for any changes that would cause a memory leak and reject them. This is not a change that is causing the memory leak. There's been a change in the tools that I assume GitHub uses for checking the memory leaks. So we build the Rebel engine on the GitHub servers and then run Rebel engine on the GitHub servers, and it then checks for a memory leak. Now, when we run it on the GitHub server, it reports a memory leak consistently, not from a change that we've made, but something else has changed on the GitHub servers. If I try and build the Rebel engine locally, I can't get the memory leak. It doesn't report the memory leak. So I can't detect the memory leak when I check it locally, but it will consistently detect the memory leak when running on the GitHub servers. The memory leak is something that we've inherited when we imported the original Rebel engine. That memory leak existed before. What we did previously was ignored memory leaks that weren't specific enough. In other words, the tools that identified where the memory leak came from didn't specify exactly where the memory leak occurred, so we couldn't identify what was causing the memory leak. Now the tools are identifying the location of the memory leak, but when we look there, it's not there. The memory is not leaking there. So I'm not quite sure what's causing the memory leak. And it's not something that we've changed. That's not like we can make a change and go back to a previous version. It's something that's happening on the GitHub servers. Obviously, the workaround to that would be to disable the memory leak checking, but I think the better way forward is to work out what's causing the memory leak, or at least what's causing the tools to identify a memory leak and fix that. So that's the first thing, and that's holding up on a lot of the other changes that are basically lined up waiting for the tests to pass before we can submit them as changes going forward. The other two things that I think are worth talking about, one is the new Rebel SDK, the software development kit that we want to provide to our users going forward. Now, the software development kit allows people to create add-ons to the Rebel engine in different ways. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to make add-ons for Rebel engine, which is not something that's easy at the moment. You can create add-ons at the moment, but it's really a difficult process that requires quite a intense understanding of how Rebel engine itself works to get the add-ons to work themselves. And we're trying to make this as easy as possible for people who have coding experience but don't necessarily need to know the innards of Rebel engine and how Rebel engine works to be able to create add-ons. We will also then create the first supported add-on that people can then plug into Rebel engine going forward. And that will be supported by the Rebel Toolbox community. So it will be an actual Toolbox supported add-on. Not saying that nobody else can create add-ons, it's just that there will be specific add-ons that we find particularly useful and think that people will want to be able to use, but don't need to necessarily be part of Rebel engine as a whole. And that will also allow us to make Rebel engine a lot more modular and use that add-on approach to have supported add-ons, so that people only include the add-ons and the tools and the services and things like that they want their game to support. A good example of that is, at the moment, it doesn't matter whether you're creating a GUI game, whether you're creating a 2D physics game, whether you're creating a 3D physics game. All three of those components are included in Rebel Engine with every game that you create. And you may not want to have those. Particularly, you not necessarily want 2D and 3D physics engines included in your game every time. You just want the one physics engine that you're using. But if you're just creating a GUI game, like some of the games that have been created, you don't need the physics engine in the background either. So you should be able to exclude physics. So that's just an example of how the add-ons would be expected to work going forward. The add-on that we would want to include as the first one that will be supported will be the SQL Light Add-On. So if you want to use a database to store anything to do with your game within a SQLite database, you'll then be able to add on the database as opposed to having the database included with every version of Rebel Engine. Again, it will just be when you want to have a database as part of your game for saving data or whatever you want to use the database for. But again, that's not something that everybody would want, but we want to make it easy enough for somebody to add a SQLite database to their game and distribute it with that. So that's the first one that we've been working on, and unfortunately, again, it's been held up by trying to identify where the memory leak's been going. The second bit of good news that we're working on is the Rebel build actions. So we have a standard way of building Rebel Engine that you can use as well, that if you want to create custom builds of Rebel Engine, you can use the build engine action within GitHub, and that allows you to then create your own games in a standardized way using the build action that we have published on GitHub. The two things that need to be updated with that action, one is that currently you need to know what the build file that Rebel action will create for you is in advance, which typically requires you to run the build action, see what file is created, and then change the file name that you think is going to be created as part of the input. And what we need to do is change it so that the build action will tell you what the build file is that is created, so you don't need to know it in advance. And then you can then take the build action, run the build action, identify the name of the file that's created, and then use that in your scripts going forward if you want to automate the publishing of the game and things like that with a new version of Rebel Engine, etc. So that's the first thing. And the second thing with the action is, of course, we don't currently have the C# module included in the nightly release. So we need to add the C# module to the builds. And that has always had a prerequisite of knowing what the build file that's created every time you build Rebel Engine, which had the prerequisite of knowing what the build, this previous point, to get the C# builds working. So now that we know how to get the build file name as part of the build, we can add the C# modules to be able to create the C# release modules. So that's a lot of news, hopefully more positive than negative. The memory leak is a big one that we want to resolve. It's a long-standing one that has been left to smolder in the background, and hopefully we can address it. Like I said, we've identified a few places where memory leaks were occurring and addressed those ones, but there seems to be one that remains. At least it's reported that it exists, and I need to identify and understand exactly what's causing it, as opposed to just going back to the old approach of just ignoring them.
That sounds very good. And as you rightly said, a lot more action has happened, a lot more stuff was done since last time.
Yeah.
And that's how it shall remain from now on. We're still working towards version 1, and at this speed, this pace, we will get there before long, I'm hoping. In addition to that, we will try and make it easier for people to start with Rebel through the documentation. So there has been a little bit of work that is not yet in production. It's still being looked through at the moment. So do get in touch if you think you have ideas on how to make everything a little bit easier for people to get started with Rebel. We're always looking for help and input. Otherwise, we will be reading through the documentation and the setup there in the next few week or two, basically. Again, look at it beforehand, look at it after the change, tell us what you think about it. If you want to help us get Rebel version 1 out sooner, you're more than welcome to come and help find the memory leak and what to do about it. It just makes it easier and quicker to have another set of eyes looking at it.
Yeah, and it's just also even just using the nightly release that we have, on your computer, particularly because I tend to use a Linux-based computer. Very little usage happens on the Windows side of things, and I was looking at the Windows side today, for example, and I spotted a bug that is occurring on the Windows side that needs to be addressed. It's not hard to address them. It's just that if we don't identify them because they only occur on particular operating systems, then we don't know about them. So if people will use the tool, just using the tools is also a great help in identifying any issues that you come across when you're using it. So if you're creating games or you have previously created games, the tool's there. As we mentioned previously, we want to be able to people to be able to import their games from other game engines as well, to make it a lot easier, and that comes along with the documentation side of things. How to start using Rebel Engine, and ideally just take a game that you currently created with a different tool and import it into Rebel Engine, and make it easy to see how you can create games and how much easier it will be to create games using Rebel Engine going forward.
Yes. So feel free to get in touch for whatever reason. We need help and support, as you can imagine, either through your time. You can donate to us as well. We would more than welcome that. Or otherwise, just join us next month at our monthly get-together on the second Tuesday of the month.
Yeah.
There will be a lot more exciting news again next month coming up. So do join us.
Yeah, if you've got questions or you're just curious or you just want to come and speak to us and find out a bit more about us and find out about why we're working on Rebel Engine, you're also welcome.
Yes. And on that note, everyone is welcome out there. We're not just looking for people who look similar to us or anything, but literally everyone is welcome except for bullies and racists.
Yeah.
Definitely excluded, but everyone else is definitely welcome. Good. If you don't have anything else?
No, I think that's enough for people to digest on.
Yes, it's been a big month this month. So if you want to get on board as the momentum is high and help us over the line with the first version, as I mentioned, get in touch, have a look on GitHub, and see you next month.
See ya.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.